Hello students. Now let us take into account the complex permanent tissue, which is further of two types, xylem and phloem. We need to revise that the permanent tissue, which is complex, has different types of cells. So here are the four different types of cells which form the xylem enlisted, and so is in the case of phloem. We have four different types of cells which would be forming the tissue in whole. So we need to know that what is the function of xylem. First of all, the function of xylem is conduction of water in one direction, that is taking it from roots to the leaves. So basically this is a conducting tissue. Then in case of phloem, this carries out bidirectional flow of the food material whichever is synthesized in the leaves. So basically the direction would be from leaves to the storage organs, and in stress conditions from the storage organ to the leaves. So this is the basic function of these two tissues, and as we are seeing the cellular composition of these two tissues, we get to know that there are four types of cells which basically form the xylem, and four types of the cells in case of phloem as well. Now in case of xylem, you must keep in mind that maximum of this tissue is dead. The wood that is present in your houses, the table, the chair, the wood that basically is part of furniture is nothing else but the xylem. If we understand it in terms of plant tissue, it is the xylem, which is the wood present in your houses, and these are the four cell types which would be forming this xylem. Though you won't find these cells inside your wood that would be present around you, but you need to know that inside a plant, the girth, the trunk that is being formed is formed of xylem, and that further forms the furniture. So what forms these xylems is, one is tracheids, vessels, xylem fibers and xylem parenchyma. As I told you, this is a dead tissue. So tracheids are also dead, vessels are also dead, xylem fibers in most cases we have dead only, and xylem parenchyma, which is initially living but later on that also becomes dead in order to store some material. We have studied that parenchyma's main purpose is storage. So this xylem parenchyma later on stages gets devoid of protoplasm, stores tannin like materials, and it also becomes dead. So all in all, this tissue is a dead tissue. So is in the case of phloem. These two cells, whether they are living or non-living, that is little bit dicey, because this cell does not have a nucleus. This cell's nucleus governs the activity of this cell, that is the sieve tube elements are main conducting cells. In case of xylem, it is both tracheids and vessels which are the conducting cells, but vessels are evolutionarily advanced. That means the higher plants or the plants which make the climax communities in most of the ecologies, they would have vessels. Or in other words, if I have to say, vessels would be primary conducting tissue or the primary conducting cells in the most complex plants, which happens to be Angiosperms, and these vessels are not found in Gymnosperms, remember that. Then come to phloem. As we were discussing the four cells of xylem, we have to discuss cells of phloem as well. These two cells are always in association of each other. These two are derived from the same meristematic cell, so they are believed to be, this companion cell term is given because this is going to be present in combination with sieve tube elements. That's why it is companion of this sieve tube element. The main conduction is done by sieve tube elements. I told you in the beginning that they would conduct the food material, that would conduct the water. So main conduction is done by the tube like sieve tube elements. They are also cells. They would not resemble tubes, but they would be tube like cells. That means they would have all the cellular composition, but yet again it would be somewhat dead. Talking about fibers, by now you must remember it that when we are talking about fibers, they will not be living. And in case of phloem parenchyma, I beg your pardon, this is a living tissue which may or may not in later on stages get devoid of protoplasm. So now we need to see that what tracheids are all about, what vessels are all about, fibers and parenchyma. So let us take each cell individually. Let's talk about tracheids first. Now what is a tracheid? Trachea is a tube-like structure, if you may notice. It has no protoplasm, so there is no tension of thinking where the cytoplasm would be, where the nucleus would be. All we need to know is that there would be a central lumen, which would be a tube-like passage from where the water would be conducted, and the secondary wall has certain thickenings protruding inside. Now these thickenings could be spiral, they could be scaliform, they could be annular. It depends on the deposition. It forms the thickenings, and from here the water is conducted. These cells are dead and are the main source of conduction in case of gymnosperms. You know what are gymnosperms? They are the plants which you usually find in your trek to some mountain, Himalayas. You might have seen pines and all. They are gymnosperms. Now we have a better evolved classification, that is angiosperms. That means angiosperms are the topmost advanced plant types that we have around us. The flowering plants. These plants have tracheates as well as the second type of xylem cells, which are known as vessels. Vessels are also tubular structure devoid of cytoplasm, but they have one advanced feature, that they would be connected to each other through pits. As in case of fibers, you have pits. In case of vessels also, they would also be tube-like structure. There would be thickenings present inside them. They would also be annular, spiral. But trachea is individual and they often have tapering ends. You understand what is a tapering end? They would have a tapering end. The cell would be like this. These vessels, they would have perforations present and one would be connected to other, so that a continuous column of conducting water is being formed. So second type is the vessels. Third thing that we have in, third type of cells that we have in xylem is Xylem fiber. Xylem fiber is nothing else. It is just like a fiber as we did in sclerenchyma. We did in sclerenchyma that there are fibers, they have outer thick wall and a lumen. Over here the lumen would be obliterated. That means again there would be thickenings and depositions, and this particular thick wall would be lignified. So hard structure would be formed in case of xylem fibers. And talking about Xylem Parenchyma, which is the fourth type of cell and the living cell which is present in it, the parenchymatous cells are small in size, they have thin cellulosic wall, and in later stages of life they are responsible for storing tannins and other starch like substances. They could store fats as well, and in later on stages they can also become dead. So this is all about xylem, which is the conducting tissue for the water, that is unidirectional flow would take place in this. Now coming to phloem. Phloem is just like xylem is the water bottle of plant and phloem is like the tiffin box. That means it is going to carry the food, but the flow would be bidirectional. Now we need to study the cells of phloem. Both of these are to be studied together. How does a sieve tube element and a companion cell look like? Pay attention over here. Supposedly this is a sieve tube element. They have perforated sieve pores present at their ends, and through pits they have connection with a large companion cell. Now the sieve tube element would have cytoplasm in it, which would be peripheral cytoplasm like this, and vacuoles can also be present over here, but maximum part is this, which is empty space for conduction, and this companion cell which is connected through pits to this sieve tube element has the nucleus. Now this companion cell's nucleus is somehow governing this cell, and this companion cell is also responsible for maintaining the pressure gradient inside this sieve tube element. Next is the phloem fibers. Like xylem fibers, they are also highly obliterated lumen they are having, they have thick wall, they have pits inside them, and then there is phloem parenchyma, which is responsible for storing materials like tannins, and at times it stores mucilaginous material as well. One thing you need to remember, that is phloem fibers are having a lot of economic importance. How? You must have seen jute bags. They are nothing else but the phloem fibers only, with tapering ends, pointing ends, and they are hard. They have deposition of lignin. Xylem fibers do not have much of economic importance because they are restricted to the trunk itself, but phloem fibers have a lot of economic importance. You might have heard about flax, you might have heard about jute fibers. They are nothing but the phloem fibers which form the bulk of the plant body. Thank you.